quick introduction.
Okay. Hi guys. Okay, so the original kind of concept of the idea came from kind of Depression era cities that were creating their own these Depression era cities were kind of making their own mediums of exchange, kind of either producer credits where they were backed by like local social services, or they were being backed by like local taxes and things like this, and they would issue them for public works, and there were lots and lots of examples of. So I was just talking a little bit like the history of cities and municipalities, and then eventually like communities creating these types of systems, generally on paper, to create local resilient economies and sort of get out of Depression era type situations. And the kind of the history to most of those municipal currencies was that, like, you know, either after World War II, a lot of them were sort of folded back into the national systems. But then there started to be lots of kind of community level programs, and you'll find these all over the world, like in Bristol, for instance, in UK, in US and California. There's all kinds of kind of communities that are creating local currency systems, and generally these are what we'd like to call something like a producer credit, where a community comes together and says, we're going to create a credit or a voucher against our future production. And then they issue those vouchers to themselves. They give out those credits to their community, and they use them in different ways. Like a simplest example is like a Canadian Tire company that issued vouchers in denominations, and they used it as marketing, and they started circulating as a medium of exchange. And so that's kind of the idea, is to say, can we create a source of credit based on future production, like a voucher, and allow that to start circulating? So that's the really simple, basic idea. And for about 10 years, we've been doing kind of paper-based systems. And then in 2018, we started doing, or 2015, we started doing sort of digital solutions on mobile phones, where a community could create their own medium of exchange. And then in 2020, we sort of rolled out a national level kind of mobile phone system, so anyone could dial in and create an account. And in this case, everyone had an equal credit line of about 100 shillings, like $1. So everyone got this dollar of credit, and we called that Sarafu. And so that was kind of our first experiment to do sort of a national kind of level program. And then that expanded from about, I think, early 2000, we had a few thousand, I think 2,000 or so users, and that expanded out to 50,000 registrations as of today. And we've tracked about $3 million of trade on that, using that token in Kenya over the last, since about 2020. And then specifically,
can you explain what a medium of exchange is for people so that they understand that terminology?
Yeah, so basically these are just like barter credits that people can exchange for goods and services amongst each other. And the typical example would be like a woman selling tomatoes. When someone comes to her saying, I don't have any money, instead of putting that person down as a debt, specifically, she, like a piece of paper where she would say, okay, you've got this much debt with me, she'll say, I'll accept the local currency, or Sarafu in this case. And then she'll have some limit of how much she'll accept of that, and then she'll try to move that debt. And then that person can also come and pay back that debt or pay it in some other way, like, she could use it to buy chapati or something else from that person. So in a way, it's kind of like people moving their debts around with each other, adding liquidity to the communities. A lot of the like impacts you see on the community level is reduction of informal debt. And then just increases to trade. And so in terms of our metrics, in terms of, like what we're trying to measure in terms of KPIs, it's basically how much more trade in different kind of categories do we see going on in these communities. And yeah, I mean, let me pause there, and I think, getting into now how, Red Cross has kind of come into the picture. In terms of 2020, going from this kind of, about a few thousand users up to about 50,000 registrations has been quite interesting. I would say, I think 40% of that has been in specific program locations, like Mukuru has been an informal settlement in Nairobi, and then Kisauni is another informal settlement near Mombasa. That represents about 40% of the growth, but about 60% of the growth is just organic growth into other areas. So there's a lot of rural development. There's groups in Kakuma refugee camps using it. There's groups in near Lake Victoria, and it's been growing and growing because anyone can have access to that platform just by having any mobile phone. You don't have to have internet or anything. So there's been a lot of growth outside of these pilots, and then within the pilots, we've tried to sort of integrate with different types of cash transfer programming. Yeah, let me pause there.
So when we first started working with Will, it was around 2019, and we had the Danish Red Cross and Kenya and Norwegian Red Cross had invited Will to a meeting in London at the London Business School, where we had invited other refugees and asylum seekers, scientists, technologists, and policy experts. And the idea was, how can we solve for the problem of cash distribution while people are on the move? How can we work with refugees, IDPs, to make cash transfer, but also use cash transfer as a means of seeding? How can we seed a pool of credit so that then we can use that credit, digitize it, and then distribute it in a safe way through digital wallets? And that was the problem we were solving for, was resilience. And so the description that Will just gave you, and the reason why I asked him to start first, was that you have an idea as to the system. And on our team, what we look for is to change the system, not necessarily to inject a program. We want to look at the value chain. We want to think about the entire ecosystem and how we can touch at different parts. And so, whereas yesterday we talked about the volcano catastrophe bond, which was a way to mobilize financing from private sector and de-risk our exposure to response and recovery and resilience, the CIC program is that connector at the end where you start to build a network of individuals who have digital wallets, and then transactions as they happen are recorded digitally on a blockchain so that we can validate it. And then between the source of funding coming from one point, traveling through the digital highway through blockchain to a next point, connects an entire ecosystem of funding. And if we can expand that going forward, that's really interesting and is systematically different than how we do things today. So to put that into context, what we look to do was to take the program that Will just described, where you're basically creating tokens, distributing them to people in vulnerable and informal settlements through a digital wallet where they can buy and sell goods using these tokens, and then to be able to figure out how to channel funds quickly through there, and then monitor the performance and use that data to help us course correct and to be adaptive in terms of how we roll out our programs. That's really interesting. So with that in mind, what I like to do is Teresa, who is one of our donors, and we are so grateful for her support from Innovation Norway, is on the call. And I just would like her to give us a few moments from her perspective as to what she found interesting about this project and how and why she took the risk on us back in 2019 before we really had a lot of traction. So Teresa, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but just a quick note from you would really give some flavor and help us put this in context. Over to you.
Sure, I haven't prepared anything, and I'm wearing my Norwegian sweater here. So, but anyway, thank you, Adam. This is a project that I'm actually been really excited about because it's one of the few projects that have been able to scale into the corona response and not been stopped and blocked to the same extent as some of the other projects that we fund. So, but I think. One of the reasons why we thought this was particularly interesting is because it strengthens the local economy and strengthens sustainability. It strengthens the community's ability to recover and to strengthen their resilience. So yeah, that was some of the key reasons why we thought this project was particularly interesting, and also because we think it's scalable. Which I think you're proving in Kenya right now, and I'd be excited to see it expand outside of Kenya as well. So thank you very much. We're very impressed by the work of the team.
Thanks, Tristan. Sorry to put you on the spot, but you're always so eloquent. I knew you'd be completely engaging, so thank you. One of the things so next I'm going to hand this over to Roy and to Samson and Var to give a little flavor from the ground. But before I get down that path, I just want to note one thing, which is one of the core reasons we wanted to work with Will and his team is that, we classify him somewhat as a social entrepreneur. And one of the engagement tools that we have at the Danish Red Cross that we're really pushing is around using social entrepreneurs to help us think about doing our humanitarian assistance and how we should rethink our projects. So we have a program that's called Humanitarian Innovation for Action, where we sit down with a national society and we say, look, what are you guys thinking about? What are your programs? How can we engage you with different types of innovations, but using innovations that have been developed by social entrepreneurs? And so we're doing this now in the Ukraine. We're looking at South Sudan, and I know with Teresa and with Norway and Innovation Norway, we're also having some discussions there. So it's a very powerful engagement tool to really put this kind of user-centric but community-centric approach. And so Will is really one of the most innovative and brilliant guys I've met. He's a former physicist, particle physicist, and to have someone working 24/7 on a project, rethinking through problems, is really a gift. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand it over to Roy with the Kenya Red Cross to give us a flavor from your experience on the ground. And specifically, one of the important points was that back in March, this program, the CIC program, was really looking at resilience, and we flipped from resilience to response, looking at COVID. And that quick kind of like few days decision to move from a resilience program into a response is really significant because we didn't have to reprogram. We just took the funds that we had, we reorganized the team a little bit, and we had, the Kenya Red Cross and their team on the ground with Will and his team in Grassroots and in Norway, Norwegian Red Cross, really go at it. So Roy, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam, and everyone. I hope you can hear me. My name is Roy Yahao. I work with the Kenya Red Cross under the Innovations Unit. Basically, one of the ideas why we are really invested and very interested in this project because we see the capacity and the aspect that it brings to the community. Because even as we look at the current area that we thought that this project would be very impactful on was in the informal settlements. And indeed, you look at the type of economies that the people in the informal settlements are in, you realize that they were very highly impacted, especially when we had the onset of Corona, because most people lost their jobs, and so it was really hard. And so this came up as one of the solutions that we had to this. How are we able to use innovative approaches to be able to increase the purchasing power of the communities where we live in? Because we realize that most people lost their jobs. And so we are looking at how are we able to influence and impact communities around this area. So we were targeting various aspects, and one of them was around behavior change. How are we able to increase or maintain the lifestyles of communities living in this area? Are they able to afford basic items or basic necessities that they would be able to need at these particular instances? And this came out very fruitfully because, again, we realized that after doing a survey around April, May, we realized that most communities, the communities really appreciated the fact that they could go to a shop and top up the Kenya shillings that they had, because we were looking at it in an aspect of not really replacing the local currency, but how are we able to use it as a way to top up what we already have to make sure that we're able to afford basic items and let's say unga or let's say bread. So this came out to be very impactful. Again, we're looking at these communities able to afford items such as soap and hygiene material, because again, we realize that in the informal settlement, you need to buy most of these items. And so with the loss of jobs and the harsh economic realities that resulted out of the COVID situation, provided a good opportunity for this. From that, we are also looking at how do we now sustain and grow the use of community currencies, because we realize that this provides much more impact because the circulation of this currency is within a particular location. So we do not have fluctuations or areas where the currency goes out of the community that you intend to bring much more focus on. And this has resulted to more positive and more impactful ways that we could see that the communities are able to benefit from this. Yes, so I'll hand it over to maybe Safia or Ba. Thank you.
Thanks, Roy. Just before we move on from there, I just want to emphasize one of the points that Roy made, and this is what Will had said earlier, which is that one of the real values of using a community currency is that those tokens or those currencies, that medium of exchange that Will talked about earlier, stays in the community. Whereas when you inject cash will eventually leave the community within a day or two, and that's statistically evidenced with lots of research that have been done and by various organizations, right? So if that money leaves the community, it's gone, right? It can't circulate. There's no liquidity. But with CICs, with the community inclusion currencies, they remain in the community. They continue to circulate, and you can get anywhere from a 5 to 10x return. So for every dollar or every shilling or for every euro or pound or yen or yuan, you get 5 times, 10 times that, which is a huge multiplier. It's a huge value for money. And one of the things that we like to focus on is how to leverage currency, how to leverage cash. Because as we look at more protracted humanitarian operations, as things become more frequent and the pool of cash starts to shrink, we need to think about, from a movement perspective, how to become more like bank-esque, how to think about leverage, how to think about value for money and mobilizing effects. And that is why this project is really interesting. So what I'm going to do next is have Var give us a quick discussion here as to like her experience from the DM department. And what I mean is that one of the really interesting things about this project is that not only did we get money from various public and private partners, i.e. the Innovation Norway, Doen Foundation, Accenture, and other groups, but then the Danish Red Cross said, you know what, this is a really interesting project, and from a DM perspective, let's see if we can implement a project in the South. So what we're seeing is that this project started from about 2,000, and now we have about over 50,000 households, right, in about a little over a year, which is pretty tremendous. That's over 200,000 people are being reached. To go from a resilience project and into a response type of modality. And now we're moving down south to think about how it might work in a DM and how cash and CICs really work together. It's a project we're still working on, but Var, just quickly walk us through that experience. Over to you.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much, Adam. Yeah, my name is Var Idali, and I work for the Danish Red Cross in the disaster management department. And yeah, it's been very exciting to be on board on this CIC project in Kenya. I think what was I know we are a bit short on time, so I'll just mention one thing that was very interesting from a DM perspective is that usually we face a challenge when you do a response. How do you make that more sustainable? So how do you go between the phases of response, early recovery, and ensure that from the beginning you're already thinking a bit long term. And this is where we saw that the CIC could be quite interesting in combining a bit the different phases and be a bit more like a longer term sustainable approach to a crisis that comes in. In this case, it was, as mentioned, the COVID-19. So I think that was quite innovative. And then Adam was saying this, how to support like cash transfer together with the CIC in order to make that link to have it more sustainable, to actually support the community even better, the network and the local trade that's going on. So I think that would be my my comment to add. Thank you so much.
Great. Yeah, and VAR has been amazing. She jumped into this project a few months ago with knowledge of cash and other tools, but really just kind of getting up to speed on the CIC program, and she's been so valuable. So VAR, thank you so much for your support and for the support of the DM. So I'm going to turn this over to Will in a second, but what I want Will to talk a little bit about is the organic nature of this project in terms of how can other communities pick this up who may not actually be targeted. And this is an interesting component because when we think about the do no harm, the inclusivity, the equitable aspect of how the Red Cross likes to work around the region and in general, this in itself is really interesting because there's a refugee camp in the north called Kakuma, and they've actually spontaneously started their own community. So Will, if you could talk about that and also some of the other projects that we're working on with GIZ and UNICEF really quickly, and then Samson, I'm going to ask you to talk about Ethiopia after this. Over to you, Will.
Hey guys. So yeah, I mean, just kind of the basic idea is that there's this infrastructural layer, which is just to provide a ledger, right? And if you look at a lot of traditional communities, like they're operating on basic ledger systems with pieces of paper quite often. And just to have access to ledger systems is quite useful. And that's really all a currency is. It's keeping track of reciprocity. And so what we've done is there's a university blockchain system called Bloxburg, and it's free and we trust it. It's a university. It's started out of Max Planck University. And basically, we've got an interface that the Red Cross is facilitating to allow people to have access to that without internet, right? And so what happens is there's a server sitting there at a telecom waiting for people to dial a little short code, and that basically gives them access to a ledger system, right, that they can start recording transactions amongst each other on. Right, so there's a public infrastructure, think of it like a public library, and all we're really doing, like technically here, is giving people access to that. And then the rest of the programming is just, training and trying to integrate that with different systems in communities, trying to integrating that with cash transfer and whatnot. But a lot of communities have just heard about it and they just start using it, right? Because they already use fairly similar stuff, and even the interface we developed is almost an exact copy of what e-money systems look like in Kenya. So they kind of already know what it looks like and the concept of it. So they've got these points or these tokens on this ledger that they have access to, and they can just start trading them. And in places where they're really missing currency, that means a lot, right? So instead of having to trade or go into debt with each other or have a coincidence of once to do fish for water or whatnot, they have a ledger. I mean, it's really stupidly simple in that concept. And so in Kakuma refugee camp, there was a group that just had heard about it from someone else, and we've got 100 businesses now that are using it in Kakuma. They've also using it to pool together to do communal farming around Kakuma to supplement the food that's coming in from WFP. So they're paying themselves to grow their own food, and then they can use that amongst each other, and then those people can use it to buy back the food, for instance. And that's a pretty common thing we see in a lot of rural areas picking this up. And this is tapping into existing like Chama structures or VSLAs or Silk or these informal groups that they simply just need a medium of exchange or a ledger system. So that's been really powerful. And then in Cameroon, GIZ partnered, it was part of the government BMZ started a project that GIZ has started now with 3 kingdoms in Cameroon to take the exact same open source technology and apply that to 3 kingdoms around Cameroon. And what's really exciting there is that they've done a lot of work around government integration. So those kingdoms may start accepting taxation in these, which would be amazing. So that'd be the biggest tax source ever. Because most of this is informal sector. No one's actually paying any tax. And then the other thing is they've got Orange on board, the Orange Telecom, to offer. So like that interface layer that allows people to access blockchain, if we don't have a telecom on board, then we're having to pay a telecom. And that's actually what's happening in Kenya right now. And it's still very expensive for us. But in Cameroon, Orange is offering to do that for free right now. And that's super exciting. So, for the telecoms to start seeing this as just a access to finance or access to technology is really powerful. And also UNICEF is starting to get on board as well. and also WFP as well. So there's a lot of interest in these types of systems and just the basic concept. And what's nice about the sort of blockchain layer is that like all these organizations can use that same layer without anyone having to sort of own it exactly. So like we don't need a UNICEF token, right? We just need an infrastructure that people can create their tokens, and we need to be able to process that data to be useful, like Adam was saying, for parametric triggering, like how do we do aid better? And so that's very exciting. And with the UNICEF side on particular, there's this real push towards certification processes. Like how do we take this data, create endorsements and validations against it, and use it to create a whole marketplace where like, you know, UN funds can actually be directed directly through essentially kind of indexing, you know, like all this information, and that can go directly into the wallets of people as well. So right. some really exciting stuff on the horizon.
Okay. Will, thanks. Like we can go on for hours, but I just want to say that we're at the bottom of the hour. We can continue to stay on for longer. We're happy to do that. If others would like to stay on, we'll continue to answer questions and talk a bit more. But what I wanted just to mention, though, was this idea of crypto philanthropy. And tomorrow, at the same time, we're going to have a discussion about crypto philanthropy and how that can support humanitarian assistance. And what Will was just discussing, and for example, UNICEF, they have a crypto fund where they use donations with crypto to support projects. And Mercy Corps does this. Many organizations are getting into this field. And so if the Red Cross can build these highways, if we can build these networks, we can then embrace this concept and really be a player in the space. But not only do we want to be a player in the space to be able to absorb these billions and billions of dollars and euros that are coming through the pipe from crypto, but we can also show meaningful systemic change and impact. And I think this point about UNICEF, GIZ, we have AFD, the French Development Agency, World Food Program. The scaling question or the exit plan is that we're building out this platform, right? We're building this platform so others can use it. Other organizations can pull it down, can co-create, and work directly with Grassroots or other organizations to make this more geared towards their project, right? One of the real innovations we've been doing here as well, and you know, credit to the Danish Red Cross, Kenya Red Cross, and Norcross, is that we've been trying to, one, pull down capital directly to our organizations, but then create opportunities and support Grassroots for money to channel directly to them, right? This is the grand bargain idea, the idea where we can fund locally. That is super important because we get so much better multiplier effects and engagement. This idea where Kakuma, the refugee camp, can come in and pull down and create their own system without us putting marketing dollars or any kind of surveillance there or encouragement is really, really interesting because then we can, again, think about value for money. So outside of Cameroon and Malawi and other countries, we're also looking at Ethiopia. And so I want to bring Samson in, who works directly with our team from Danish Red Cross. He's our representative in Africa from the innovation side. I just want him to give a little taste for what we're doing in Ethiopia right now and some of the challenges. And again, I think not to say that this is absolutely perfect. We have a lot of challenges. Like there's a lot of issues that we have to deal with. But because we can adapt and move quickly as a team, and we have the support of the community and our seniors, I think that it's really an interesting approach. So, Samson, over to you.
Thank you, Adam. Hello, everyone. So, I mean, this community inclusion currency and the idea of innovative financing, innovative partnership has really taught us quite a lot of curves in the work that we have in the humanitarian sector. So taking the lessons that we've learned in Kenya so far, we've already started making an assessment in two areas in Ethiopia. One is in the north parts of Ethiopia, and the other is in the west south of Ethiopia. So in the north part, we have like a high drought, and there is a high number of migrants returning and going away. So we wanted to really work with those, with that area to assist and create an innovative approach for solving the lively problems that we encounter there. The other program that we are looking at is the west-south parts of Ethiopia, And this area, it's most of them are farmers, and they really need assistance with their livelihood, programs and activities. So we have created a program in which we can really address. And now we're, finished the first cycle, the assessment, and we are building how we go about from there. So through this especially in Kenya, we've also learned persons with disabilities being very much active, and women being very much active in the chamas, in the group work, and in the building of resilience. So it's very exciting, and I'm sure we will excel from here. Thank you, Adam, and thank you. Over to you, Adam.
Great, Samson. Thank you so much. So we are over time, but if there's any specific questions that people have, just go ahead and put yourself on video and go ahead and ask the question, or you can write them in the box. And in the meantime, Will is going to go ahead and put the RCT, which was requested earlier, so for those that aren't super familiar with RCT, it's a randomized controlled trial, and this was done recently. We just released the results. It was kind of really extraordinary how it was done remotely, but it was the first time that you get that granular data that does support a lot of this work, which is interesting because during the period of COVID, trying to do an RCT is almost like impossible. You can't get close to people. But when you start thinking about how blockchain can play a role in that, that's a whole other dimension. So there's a question in the box from Mark. So thanks for the fascinating work. Could you please describe the user self-enrollment and results of the issuance of the wallet? So Will, can you talk a little bit about how the KYC and the airdrop works?
Yeah. Okay. So for the national program with it's called Sarafu here in Kenya, anyone in the country that has a SIM card and often we have like 5 women that have a SIM card, but then they have one phone. So SIM cards are pretty easy to get in Kenya. By virtue of having that SIM card, they go through a process of setting a PIN. They dial this short code is the first thing, and that's free because we're subsidizing it right now. And so that's our biggest challenge. One of them, anyways, is the cost of having to subsidize that. So it's free for the users, but we're paying the cost to the telecom. So that's our biggest challenge right now. We're not going to be able to scale to 1 million users if we have to pay the telecom, X amount of cents per usage of those menus. But anyways, they enter a password, they enter some information about themselves, and they are created a blockchain address that's tied to that SIM card and their password. And they're initially airdropped 100 tokens that they can just use within their networks. That's basically the entire supply of that token is just that. It's created by just people getting this little credit line. And then there's a demurrage, a negative interest on that. So if people are accumulating them, they get charged 2% a month, and that's redistributed automatically out into the same network of whoever's active in the network. And active just means that they're using the system. So there is a bit of insurance that people are not going to hoard these. We don't want people to see them as a means of savings, but rather a medium of exchange. And there's a lot of data and history, studies around demurrage is what it's called in German generally, or holding fees being really useful, better than transaction taxes.
And Will, so just to clarify, the KYC aspect in terms of how do we allow any unverified users to use this, or is everybody verified?
Yeah, so right now everyone is verified through the telecom, and so that's really we're very, very heavy on telecom right now. There is no internet access; it's all access through the local telecom network. So the telecom's doing the KYC for us, yeah, that's basically it. And then the future kind of issuance around these things is we want municipalities and local organizations to issue them themselves as vouchers against their future production. In that case, they are doing a contract with the local government that basically says that these are promissory notes against future production, and those are defined and signed off by the local elders and chiefs and whatnot. So in terms of local CIC issuance, the goal there is that that's an actual legal contract towards this. The nationwide program has been more of like a loyalty credit kind of program, if you will. Yeah.
Just to clarify, though, I think the KYC process is a little bit more than the fact that we let the telecom approve it. So there's 3 levels of KYC, and at each level, you get more access to the system. And Will, if you could talk about those 3 levels and how we validate those, that would be really good, because I think that it's important to demonstrate that this isn't just leaving it to the government to look at. It's actually, there's a process of validating and then giving more access. Over.
So our basic risk levels is that anyone, by validation through their SIM card, which we have automatically, everyone can transact up to $200 worth of these tokens a week, and they're socially pegged 1-to-1 to the Kenyan shilling, and so so roughly $200 of trade, and then anything above that, they have to go through a secondary evaluation process. Like we have to talk to them, we have to get their ID number, and so that's kind of the second level, and that goes up to about $1,000 of trade volume that they can have within a week. And then above that, they have to have something like a bank statement that they're actually like a legal entity above that. So we basically have volume requirements at different levels for what that KYC level is. Yeah, over.
Great. And so we have another question from Daniel. He's asking about how do we do the onboarding. And so Roy, if I could ask you, if you're still on, can you talk a little bit about how new communities come on board, how we onboard them, the process of working directly with the chief and the community and the elders and the training that's involved? Because I know during COVID and when we were in Mukuru, you played an integral role in doing that, standing up the programs and working directly with the communities. I think that's and then VAR and Samson, if you have your own experiences, please jump in. Over.
Thank you, Adam. On onboarding, it's very important to look at critically which are the partners that you'd want to associate with the projects in a particular community, because again, it's very important that the leaders, the community leaders, and the different stakeholders within the community understand why we are doing CICs and what are CICs. Because definitely, if the community leaders do not understand the approach that we're using in this given intervention, they would probably cause problems. And important that now you get that going. So one of the approaches that we use basically is just to make sure that we have a meeting with them and understand, take them through how CICs works, what are CICs, and definitely how the communities are protected and they are able to create that advantage of using CICs rather than just using Kenya shillings. The next step would be basically just to create a network of individual communities, because it's very important to make sure that the communities are interested from within themselves, and it's not something that you do a mass registration, because from the earlier exercises we've identified that mass registrations do not really give you value, because you end up signing a lot of people that will not end up using the CICs in a longer term. So it's also important to make sure that when you are going to a community, you have a group of people who already have an understanding of how the community currencies would work, and you make sure that their level of understanding of the CICs are much better improved, because you need community members, you need shop owners, you need different vendors who play a key role in the economy of community. So it's important to take them through why they need to use CICs and how to use these CICs, because another thing is that they will end up getting or accumulating a lot of CICs for themselves, which do not really translate to the value that they have in mind, but rather it creates more value when you're able to use it within your neighbor, and the neighbor is also able to understand or get the value out of the CICs. The other aspect is now looking at different social enterprises or businesses within the community that are able to chip in and provide some of the goods or services to the community through the CICs, because it's important to see how the trade moves or how the communities are able to get value for the commodities that they are trading on. Yes, lastly, I would like to say that it's important to bring in additional level of understanding or a community-based trust method, because again, you not want a situation where you are trying to show CICs versus Kenya shilling in terms of each competing with the other, but we'd like to see how they coexist in the same community so that it creates more trust and it creates more understanding that this is locally owned and it's a local approach to be able to improve the livelihoods of the community.
Great. Thanks, Roy. That's fantastic. So we have just a few minutes left. I'm going to ask Var if she can maybe describe a little bit her experience with the training and how we've onboarded communities. And I'll say that what we did early on, and Will has done a lot of training, and there's a lot of videos on YouTube. But we did work with a team that works on gamification. How do you gamify the process of learning, and how do you gamify training so that it can be inclusive? And so a lot of those videos are actually online, and if you drop us a note, we can share some of those with you. But Var, coming into this, and you've done some of the initial training with some of the new communities. What has been your experience? If you could share that, that'd be great.
Hi, Adam, and hi, everyone. Yeah, so I think it's a bit in line with, of course, what Roy was explaining before. I think what has been very interesting is seeing how, so the volunteer groups from the Kenya Red Cross are actually already from that same community, some of them. So that has been, I think, quite central in the interaction with the communities and the way that they have been able to mobilize people to join these trainings. And I think what was very good at this was together with grassroots economics as well, was that we actually did exercises where we were doing these trading between us. So they were divided into smaller groups and trying to play out this like Sarafu network that would come out. And I think this is a very good way of learning and understanding the concept to see that basically, and this is the whole idea as well, what Will was explaining, is that it's not something new that comes in, it's actually building on existing trading structures. It's just a mean on how to do this trading structure a bit more specific, so you are not in debt, you actually have some kind of trading tokens to use instead. So I think this fact, first of all, that having like young volunteers and maybe even some from the communities and the way that they mobilize and engage, and then having these exercises being carried out within the different groups that you would call for these smaller meetings, I think has been very successful. Yeah. Is that okay, Adam?
That's great.
Yeah?
That's great, Var. Fine. And then let me just ask Samson, from your experience, coming from Ethiopia and spending time in Kenya, thinking about these, what has your experience been in terms of like the onboarding, the engagement? That would be really good.
Thank you very much, Adam. So my experience when communities are on board, it's quite a little bit different from the saving groups that we have in cash or in other kind of modalities. Here, there is a little expectation from each member, to accumulate or to make savings through community service or through the chamas or through the groups that are coming from. So it's very much interesting to see that most of the members are women, and they almost when they joined, by the time they have started joining the group, they have already started, making a lot of saving as a maximum of 10,000 sarafu, which is really very much, promising, to see, members being able to have like a maximum of 200,000 sarafus as their group capital, to start investing within the community. So that's my experience, Adam. Over.
Okay. Will any final last words, Roy or Var or others on the call? We'll wrap this up in 1 minute, but it's your opportunity to talk now.
Yeah.
Maybe I can. Oh, go ahead, Will.
I'll be quick. Just that, you know, this being some kind of infrastructural kind of a system, and it's really powerful that, you know, Red Cross has been spearheading this. There's a lot of interest in, you know, how to create marketplaces around this data, how to, you know, take this onto sort of the next level. It seems like we're in a, you know, the Red Cross is in a good position to really scale these types of programs out, be the guys on the ground that are introducing it, you know, working with the chamas like Roy, and then bringing on other partners to sort of, you know, like utilize these further programs. Like, for instance, the WFP utilizing CIC4 Cash for Assets program we're in talks with them right now, for instance, and the GIZ example is also really powerful. So yeah, I'll stop there. Thanks, everybody. Go ahead, Vera.
Yeah, Will, it was just echoing actually what you're saying now. Just the advantage of working with, in this case, Kenya Red Cross, who already have a lot of structures and network and volunteers all around and in the communities. I think this is really a strength and has been helping this to be carried out in a lot more like faster and better way. And then also, of course, I want also to say that we're having Grassroots Economics on board who have several years of experience. Is definitely also an advantage when it's like piloting projects that you're trying out. So yeah, that was just also my comment. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Var. So we'll wrap it up here again tomorrow at this time. We're going to have a discussion on crypto philanthropy, and again, thinking about ecosystems and network effect and platforms and how all these different projects link together. That linkage is really powerful. Having social entrepreneurs at the core, working on a network, a movement-wide approach where we have 3 different Red Cross national societies coming together with really strong donors, and then having the room to course correct and adapt. Those are super critical. And so, not only is this an innovation project from a finance perspective, it's an innovative systems change approach as well, and a different mindset to how we look at doing humanitarian response, recovery, and resilience. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email any of us. We're really excited to have all of you here, and have a great week. Over.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thanks very much.
See you guys.